David Ferguson here, Kentucky Law Scholars. And remember, Kentucky Law Scholars could always use your help. And anything that you can do for us, uh, Kentucky care of Kentucky Law Scholars, care of University of Kentucky Federal Credit Union, 2557 Sir Barton Way, Lexington, Kentucky 40509. And they've got other branches. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how lawyers and others will manipulate judges and judges' signatures. Well, I was just a new person and I had to take up law on my own. Um, and they would do all kinds of testy things to me, take lawyers out, put lawyers in, have firms come in, out. And this one particular time, I was brand new. I was just a pupil, and I still had the shaky knees when I went in before a black robe. I had the shaky knees. Well, they would wait. We had a hearing every 2 weeks on a Thursday, and they would wait a whole week. And then on the Monday or even a Tuesday, they put these motions in the mail for me to respond to. Now, these are the people that I took all the way to federal court. I took them all the way to federal court with $100 Dell laptop and a $24 Canon printer. And these people had secretaries and all the papers were by the state covered. Everything was covered. They had everything. And they can do anything they wanted to you. So this one particular time, they bombarded me with five motions. Five motions. And I had 48 hours to respond to them, type them up and everything, print them out, get them notarized, everything. And I was a newbie. I was didn't I was working hard trying to learn this law stuff. So I got these motions and I opened them up and I looked at them and I said, well, I said to myself, I said, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna answer the ones that has a nice little paragraph double space. I'm gonna answer the easy ones first. The ones that's short, I'm gonna answer them first. And I did that. And I spent the rest of the time on this one motion. It was 29 to 34 pages, something like that. And I just couldn't figure why this motion was so big and why it was so ridiculous, radical. It had everything in it, definitions of this, definitions of that, and then the order was underneath there, and the order didn't even correspond with none of the other stuff, and I just couldn't make heads or tails of it. And I had once or twice got a thing, a notice from a judge, and something happened, and they said that we're going to issue a new court date for this. This is a continuance letter. We're going to continue this to another time, and we'll issue um, a new date for it. So I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do one of those. I'm going to ask for continuance on it because I can't make heads or tails of it. I spent hours and hours and hours on it, and here come the hearing date, and there we was in there, opposition counsel, me, and Black Robe judge. So right off, the other ones was took care of, the other motions, the other four motions. And this one particular motion had come up, the big one. And so he starts immediately, like a little devil, telling all kinds of things. And if I may continue, sir, and just on and on and on and on in this judge's ear. And then he looks over at me, and I had already previously told him I had two attorneys. And I said, this fool for client does not apply. I can't afford no more, and I'll have to do it on my own. I told him that a month or two before. And he looks at me after this attorney's doing this and all this stuff. And he says, well, what about you? And I said, Well, sir, I said, and now this is called kind ad hominem. Ad hominem's a Latin phrase. It means cutting somebody down like he's the worst lawyer you ever seen. That's just friendly ad hominem. But I said, sir, my opponent counsel here has been less than honest on his last documentations. And I said, frankly, sir, I would like a continuance on this to further study. I can't make heads or tails what he's saying. And I said, I'd like a continuance to check it out further. And then I said something. It must have come directly from God. I don't know what it was. But I said 4 words. I said, but what do you think, sir? And he stood up. To my surprise, he stood up and he didn't shuffle the papers, you know, gather them up. He didn't do that. This this motion, he grabbed a hunk of it, and he grabbed this motion and he just crinkled it, and he stood up and right on camera he said, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to read it. Then he did a pivot like a basketball player. He did a pivot and he about face and he turned and he exited the room and went out the door. And I was just flabbergasted. Here was this judge coming in here to adjudicate something. I prefer that adjudicate over docket. I just don't like docket, but adjudicate. But here he was in there to adjudicate this thing, and he hadn't read it. He didn't even know nothing about it. Didn't know what it was about. And he was going to let this attorney, which he did, and I guess a lot of them do, and their signatures get out from underneath of them, and then somebody will take something with their signature on it, and they'll go out and harm some senior citizen or somebody, steal from them and everything, harm them. Now, before you think, oh, that's a terrible judge and all that and everything, and he shouldn't have done that. It took a while, and I had to research this to find out exactly what had took place. And what happened was, oh, he threw the book at me. Oh, he did. He went totally against me, and he didn't reprimand his friend. No, his bar member. He didn't reprimand him or nothing. But he went against me. But what happened was, I researched it, and I found out that particular day, that judge, Black Robe, that judge, he had to adjudicate 34 cases that day. That one particular day, he had to adjudicate 34 cases. He had to go through and make decisions on them. Now, that's a vast number for a judge to go over. Some probably simple, some not. So he had read all he could read. But now this big old confusion motion, he just didn't read it. He thought, well, I'll go in and ask, and they'll tell me about it and everything, and I'll make my decision and all. That's the way he was going to work this one. Now, that attorney, you see, he pre-knew that this judge that particular day, because it's on computers and everything, what they got going on all that day. He knew that this judge, this Black Robe, he knew that he had a full day's adjudication. He'd be lucky to make it through. And he knew that if he did that, that he could manipulate this judge, that he would just come in and say, because just come in and say, well, what we got going on here? And then that's when he lowered the boom on him, and he tried to get him and manipulate him a certain way. And then what he expected was the judge would lift up that paper, bunch of papers, and go to that order and sign that order and make his dreams come true. And he could harm somebody with that. Well, the reason for me telling you this is so that you know that when you like when you're a factory worker or something, or you work at a place and you work around a bunch of people, and one person gets promoted over the other. Well, these friends and these workers, co-workers, they will take advantage of this guy. He's new. He just got promoted above everybody. He's a good old boy. He's a good buddy. And they'll take advantage of him. Well, the same thing happens in these courts and things. Same thing happens in hearing rooms, wherever. When a judge don't recognize that he's at a different level now, but he was their co-workers and stuff, and they work with each other all the time. But most of them, they their signature can get out from underneath of them. Now there's a thing on there. It's called respondit superior. Let the master answer. It's called vicarious liability, and it's also known as the master servant rule, which an employer is responsible for his agents, his employees he sends to do something. Now, one famous case was uh, Charles Manson case, 1969. From what we know, he wasn't even on the scene. He wasn't on the scene at all. But the others told him that he sent them, and he got convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, which there was 5 people murdered actually, and he spent the rest of his life in prison till the day he died a few years ago. And that was basically respondit superior. Let the master answer. He sent them.